Hi there, this is Arakai Moon with Star Siren Astrology coming to you about the Venus Retrograde coming up. The Venus Retrograde happens on May 12th and 13th, and it happens all the way until June 25th. However, we have 3 stages of retrograde, and so what I want to cover in this video is, first of all, what is retrograde? What does it mean for us when a planet goes retrograde? And what are the 3 stages of that retrograde so we can really be prepared for this underworld journey of Venus. Then I want to speak about who is Venus, who is she to us, what does she represent, and what does it mean for Venus to be in Gemini? How does that relate to you and your personal chart? How can you find that out? And lastly, I want to touch on what are some of the other planets that Venus will be aspecting or dancing with during this retrograde period. And how does this affect us during this lockdown, during this global pandemic, leading into our elections? What are some of these global and collective themes that Venus is going to be working us through? And how does that impact us on a very, very personal level? Because wherever Venus touches, hits us home. Okay, first of all, let's cover what is a retrograde. How does this affect us? What does it even mean when a planet seems to be moving backward? Is that even possible? Okay, so to answer some of those questions, a planet never actually moves backwards. However, when it gets really close to Earth, and therefore magnifying its effect on Earth, on us, the planet appears to go station and then begin to go retrograde. During that time is a time of great learning. It's an initiation of that planet and the human consciousness. And so when that planet comes closest to Earth, it magnifies these lessons of whatever archetype of the zodiac she's moving through and whatever medicine that planet has to offer, whatever challenges, whatever gifts. It's really crucial that we understand what Venus's challenges and gifts are, especially while she's in Gemini, and how that is going to impact us. That prepares us to step through the gate for after the retrograde to actually be moving forward in a more empowered way. And so the 3 stages of retrograde that I'd like to speak about is the shadow period, and that's the pre-retrograde phase. And so that we're actually in right now. So the shadow period began on April 9th and 10th, depending on your time zone. What a shadow period means is that as Venus is moving through the night sky, she's going, she passes Gemini in the 5th degree, April 9th and 10th. Then she keeps moving, and then May 12th, she stations. And then May 13th, she begins her descent into the underworld. She begins to go backward into retrograde. So she goes from 5 degrees of Gemini all the way to 21, and then all the way back again. And so that pre-shadow period is giving us an indication of what are some of the themes that are going to be coming up when she actually goes into retrograde. That's what we're revisiting. That is what the lessons are. That is whatever happens during this period will be then revisited and then amplified, and we will go through that until we are fully initiated, until we are fully integrating that which Venus is teaching us. And so that pre-shadow period is a really great time to get your awareness of what's happening. How are you personally feeling this? What things are going on in the collective? It's like time to get your antennae out and start really feeling and sensing and kind of preparing for the ceremony, if you will. Journaling, getting it out. You know, it's like before you go into a fire ceremony, it's like you gotta write it down. You gotta really feel into the process of what it is you're gonna be detoxing or deprogramming in your life. Because when you step into that ceremony, you're in it, you know? And so from May 13th until June 25th, we'll be going again from 21 degrees of Gemini all the way back to 5 degrees of Gemini on June 25th. Then she'll station again, leading us into the 3rd phase of the retrograde, which is then the post-shadow period. And so again, pre-shadow, 5 degrees of Gemini, all the way to 21 degrees of Gemini. Retrograde, 21 degrees of Gemini, all the way back to 5 degrees of Gemini. Post shadow, 5 degrees of Gemini, all the way back to 21 degrees of Gemini. On July 28th, we'll be finally moving out of the ceremony. And so as you can see, it's kind of a long journey. It's definitely going to work us in the realms of 5 to 21 degrees of Gemini. We'll get into what that means for us on a collective level and a personal level. 5 and 21 degrees of Gemini is where you want to look at in your chart. What house does that fall under in your chart? What planets are touching that place? That is going to show you what area of your life it's going to touch. For me, it's in my midheaven. It's directly moving across my moon, my black moon Lilith, and my Chiron, all in my midheaven. And so it means that it's going to be a huge transformation in the way that I express myself with the world, in the way that I am with my career, with my gifts and my offerings to the world. And it's going to affect me in a very personal way because it's touching these personal planets of mine as well. And so that's just an example to show you that for everyone, it's going to touch people differently. Some might be experiencing it in their homes, some might be experiencing it in their relationships, some might be experiencing it in their career. It's going to touch every part of you differently. And so reach out to me if you'd like. I can help you find where it is in your chart and what aspect of your life it's going to affect and how you can move through it. And now let's move into who is Venus? What does she represent? You know, Venus is known as the night and the morning star. She's the brightest star in the night sky, even though she's a planet, of course. And we can track her journey because she's so bright. And every 1.6 years, she goes through a retrograde, coming very close to Earth, moving through the sun, and then becoming the morning star. And so Venus's journey through the underworld, through her transformation from the night to the morning star is beautiful mythology. You know, it's often depicted as Inanna. You know, it's the stages of moving down into the underworld, being stripped of all of her layers, you know, through every chakra. There was something to be removed as she goes down into these layers. And so this is a powerful and very personal journey. She represents Aphrodite, the goddess of love. She represents our relationship to home and to our body, our relationship to the earth and to our food and to our physical world, you know, to our food and our Garden of Eden, you know, within and without. She represents our relationships, and so sex, love, money. She represents our relationship of spirit being in a body and all things of the flesh, of physicality, of sensuality, the Garden of Eden. And so how that affects us on a personal level is our relationship to our body, to our money, to our relationships, to our physical world, and to our relationship with our physical security is going to be brought up at this time. You know, it's like this is the theme that we are being asked to reevaluate. And what a huge part of that is Venus represents our values. And so because it's our physical reality, our physical security, it's like, what do you value? She's the one that shows us what we value is represented in our food, in our art, in our relationships, in our home, in our body, you know. And so it's how does your value system create the garden of which you live, create the temple that you make your life, you know. And so all of those components and facets of our life is what we will be reevaluating, to deconstruct, to heal, to, you know, strip down and take a look at and really get in to the nitty gritty parts of our physicality in our life to say, okay, how does my relationships represent my value? How does it represent my relationship to self-worth? And so our relationship to our self-worth and what we value is what's on the table here. And money and work and home and our body and our food and our relationships, that's all the components that are going to be showing us really what do we value. You know, there's a saying that says, show me where you put your money and I'll show you what you value. Or take a look at a culture's art, at what they create, to see the reflection of what they value. And so what do you create? What is your art? How do you create your life? How does that represent what you value? How do your relationships reflect your own value and self-worth? This is huge medicine right now for us because we are in a time of isolation. We are in a time of pause and major reflection and major revisions on a personal and collective way. And so what better time leading us into the elections, leading us into what do we do after this time where we have broken down our economy, where we have paused, where millions have lost their jobs. What better time to reassess our values and our sense of worth inside of the world and the art that we create, you know? And so this Venus retrograde really is deep medicine for us in this time. It might feel challenging in moments. It might really, you know, rock us and strip us a little bit, shake us up. But ultimately, it's a beautiful time to move into a ceremony of what we value. It couldn't really be better timed. And that being said, before I move into the specificities of Venus and Gemini and what that means, I want to speak about the 2 cycles that Venus is bringing full circle for us. So Venus, like I said earlier, moves on a 1.6 year cycle of retrograde. And so the last time that Venus was in retrograde was in 2018. In the fall of 2018, Venus was retrograde in Scorpio. And that was one of the most, personally, that was probably the hardest transit and experience I've ever had in my life. And for a lot of people, fall of 2018 was, I was counseling so many clients were getting divorced and breaking up and all sorts of things. It was really a time of bringing up deep, tremendous desires and unmet needs, and shame, and, you know, all the things that represented Scorpio. And so why I bring all that up is not to say, oh my God, we're going to go through this doomsday again, but it's to say that that cycle is now coming to a close. And so whatever happened, if you can track your life back to fall of 2018, September, October, November, and even a little bit into mid-December when she actually exited her shadow phase. And so if you think about what were some of the themes that arose for you then, and how have you progressed? What is coming full circle? What themes are coming up again? Or has a major chapter been closed? You know, for my life, it's actually crazy what was triggered in the fall of 2018 has just recently fully been released. It is as if that Venus retrograde in Scorpio brought up the deep subconscious wells of these undercurrents of things that needed to change, things that were out of balance, desires that needed to be met. You know, it's like the dance between attachment and a soul desire. You know, what is the attachment that's causing us suffering and that we have to release and transcend, and what is the desire that is our soul calling us towards? You know, and I do think that we have been in a journey through that of finding what is our soul calling us home to. What desires are not to be let go of? What desires are you made to express? Were you born for? And I think that this is a really powerful time to come full circle, because a lot of us are feeling like we were born for this time, you know? And so it's like, did everything get clear? Did you release all that you needed to in that 1.5-year journey? And now, what are you moving into? Another cycle that is a larger cycle is Venus was in Gemini retrograde 8 years ago. And so in 2012, May and June of 2012, is when she was retrograde in Gemini. And so I don't know about you, but that excites me. Because for one, you got to track back to what was going on for you. Again, look on your Facebook or your Instagram or your journals, talk to your friends, whatever was happening for you in that time, you might be finding a larger ceremony closing. The reason that it excites me is that there was such a massive shift in 2012. There was this huge collective awakening. There was a lot of things that happened. And so the fact that she's coming into Gemini again makes me feel that there's another veil. There's another level of awakening happening. And I do think that we have needed a collective crisis in order to wake us up. I have always said that we have to become uncomfortable to get out of our complacency. We have to be shocked to wake up. At least for me anyways, I have to be shocked. I don't wake up so easily. Some people are a little bit more graceful and they wake up to whispers. However, we haven't been waking up. And so the collective shows me that it needs a little bit bigger of a shock to get us out of some of these patterns. And so with that, look back on 1.5 years ago of the fall of 2018. Look back on 8 years ago, May and June of 2012, and feel into what is coming to a close. What and how can you move forward into this new chapter of Venus? And so with that, let's move into Venus and Gemini and what that represents. Gemini, what an interesting sign for Venus to be in during a retrograde while the whole world is under isolation, because Gemini is all about our perceptions, our reality, about connection, about networking, weaving. It's all about gathering information, being a social butterfly, the jack of all trades, the magician, if you will. It's like taking a little bit of this and a little bit of that and learning how to really create something with it. It's also about letting go of this is right, this is wrong, this is the pathway forward, this is how I need to do this, this is how you need to do this. It's letting go of the dogma, letting go of tradition, letting go of held and fixed patterns and belief systems so that you can open, so that you can try on new lenses, new perspectives, new shoes, if you will, to step into, I always say Gemini is like the ability to try on somebody else's lenses and see how they see, speak how they speak. It's finding ways to bridge the worlds, I feel like it represents our neural pathways because it's like these bridges to our connections. And that being said, we are in isolation. And so there's this need for Gemini to be stimulated and connected and stimulated. It just wants to be excited. It doesn't want to get bored. It really wants to gather and talk it out and really talk it out, and so this is an interesting time. And so it makes sense that Venus is retrograde during this, because it's okay, Gemini, you want to do that? How do you do it under these circumstances? How do you do it in these parameters, And I think that it's powerful because it's actually asking us, instead of just gathering and grabbing and extending and reaching and filling our mind, our perception with so many thoughts and so many conspiracy theories and people's worldviews and all of the things, and talking and creating, friends and, filling ourselves with Instagram or whatever it is. It's like, instead of getting so immersed in that and overwhelmed by it, it's asking us to be really clear on what you want to learn. How do you want to expand your mind and your perceptions of reality in this time? Because Gemini can get scattered, it can get fragmented, it can also be lies and misinformation. And so at a time where there is so much theory, so much information, it's like the collective is, I think, our collective consciousness in the internet is like reaching its full capacity of just like all of this intensity. I think with Venus coming really close to Earth and magnifying that Gemini, it's magnifying that information. It's magnifying that desire to reach and to grab and to learn, to not be stagnant, to not be stuck, to connect. It's like, how will we do it in a way that's not going to fracture us, that's not going to spin us out? It's get really clear with your mind right now. Get really clear with what information you're feeding yourself and how that reflects your values. How does that affect your body? How does this information affect your relationships? How does what you gather and what you do with your talking, your voice, and your mind, how does that inform your physical reality, your Venusian desires? Again, your relationship to your own set of values. Gemini also rules the hands. It rules the lungs. And so I think that's a really interesting thing right now, because we're washing our hands and we have a virus that's attacking our lungs. And so I think that what that shows me is that there's something about our perceptions, something about our mind that also wants to inform and support our lungs. How do the words that we speak and what we speak about support our lungs? How does the information that we grab and the energy that we extend out and connect ourselves with support our hands? What are you grabbing at? What are you reaching towards? That's a really powerful question. I could really feel myself. I was laying down the other night and I could feel my energy reaching out, constantly reaching out to people, to things, to just fill me, feed me, entertain me, nourish me, secure me, something, And it's like, ooh, a time of, I was literally imagining myself drawing all my energy inside and anchoring it into that space. And that is where I could actually feel myself get clear and feel myself actually open to bringing things in, to receiving, to drawing and magnetizing the people and the things and the experiences that I'm meant to have right now, instead of trying to find it, trying to grab it, trying to get it. And so I think that that's a really powerful meditation that we could be working with, is whatever you have to do in order to clear your mind and reclaim your energy so that you can truly be open, you can truly let go of belief systems and attachments, so that we're not spending this retrograde in a reaction, in this push and pull and these cravings and aversions, that we're actually able to heal ourselves from that constant state and see how our perceptions can actually be opened and expanded in a way that informs our value systems, and how our value systems inform what we create our lives to be like. And lastly, I would like to say that there's 2 other aspects to this retrograde that are important to mention. And one of those is the sun. When Venus finally makes her way up to the sun, it will be June 2nd, and she will move through that. And that is a moment where I think that it's really, it's like we're still in the retrograde, but it's this moment where the sun shines a light onto the hidden parts of these aspects of our perception, of our, information in our mind, and the things that we learn, and the things that we're gravitating towards, and the things that we're connecting, and how we can really allow that sun's essence to illuminate some of these darkened crevices that might be hidden out of our awareness until that moment. And so just kind of marking these dates on your calendar. Again, let's go through. April 10th is the shadow period, moving to May 12th, and then from May 13th to June 25th is the actual retrograde. And then from June 25th to July 28th, we will be going through the post shadow, integrating all of that, which we uncovered. And so that time when Venus moves up to the sun on June 2nd is that time where it's like, okay, get really ready to let that light of your own awareness and the light of the sun pierce through the places that are really being asked to change. And again, it's going to have a lot to do with our perceptions of reality. It's going to have a lot to do with our relationship to information, with what we learn, what we gather. And make sure to support your hands and your lungs during this time. Another key component to this is that Venus will be squaring Neptune throughout this retrograde. And so Venus is in Gemini, Neptune is in Pisces. They're going to be squaring one another. This is definitely going to be a time of major illusions dropping, veils dropping, disillusionments happening, misinformation, things coming to the consciousness that were previously hidden or denied. This is a time of gaslighting, if you will. I was listening to this thing, it's like, and that, my friends, is how you gaslight a nation. And that's kind of what we've been experiencing our whole lives. And so, sorry for the Texan voice that just decides to come out of me when I talk about gaslighting the nation. We have a lot of belief systems and dogmas and traditions and people in power, where our power is. This system is crumbling. Everything in Capricorn is causing our systems of power to crumble. And so with that will be a fight. It will be like the crashing down essentially of a patriarchy, of consumerism. So there will be this need to wake up. And Gemini rules perceptions, and Pisces rules transcendence and connection, but it can rule delusion. It can rule fragmentation. It can rule like getting caught in fantasies and conspiracies, and how will we lose ourselves in this time, and how will we find ourselves? And so my warning to that is be really mindful of what you intake with your information, what perceptions, what goggles you try on. Be open to trying things on, but also make sure that you don't get lost in that world or that perception of reality, because there's going to be a lot of left hand, right hand, right and wrong, and good and evil, and all of these things creating stories and worlds. And it's probably like they're both a little true. And we're going to really need to be able to be wise and sifting through all of this without wasting our energy and getting lost, but also bringing, that part of us that can be slightly detached and bring this fairness and this justice and this balanced perspective to what is going to really be playing on a lot of our emotions, because Venus rules what we value and our body. And we all know that right now there's a massive debate about what we value and what we should do with our bodies and our earth, and how we need to move forward in that. Do we vaccinate everyone? Do we microchip everyone and go into mass control, domination, world power? Or is that a way to help everyone? Because, hey, we don't want anyone getting sick and dying. So there's a lot that's going to be uprising. And when it has to do with our values, you know, it's going to be really personal. This is a really poignant moment given our circumstances to get really clear and to really hone in on your own navigation system so that you can navigate through these times, so that you can know what to say yes to and what to say no to, that you can know what to reach out and feed and know what is really feeding you. Because if we're just reaching and grabbing and we're trying to get a need met in a very indirect way, it's not going to meet that need and we'll get spun out. That's why Neptune in Pisces, it rules addiction. So making sure that when these parts of us are reaching, are gathering, are connecting, it's not just feeding illusion. It's not just feeding fear and fantasy or conspiracy or addiction, loneliness. Let's get real clear with what it is that we're actually trying to feed and get the best way to feed it, the best way to open into that desire. Okay, I know this is a long video. Thanks for staying with me. I really appreciate all the love and the support. Message me. I'd love it if you subscribe and like, and also give me a comment in the YouTube section, because I know all you guys just write me personally and I really love that, but I think YouTube wants the algorithms like to know that I got people liking me. So if you send me a comment down below, I'd greatly appreciate it. And I'd also love it if you share it to all your friends. I'd really like to start reaching a broader network. All right, guys. Blessing.